Do you want to start?
Sure.
What do you
Start.
think?
Morning. Happy
Good
Friday.
morning. Good
Happy
morning.
Friday, Melanie. All right, for those of you who are not familiar, we open our sessions, our Diversity Council events with a little bit of trivia to get everybody warmed up. So we will put these questions up on the screen. We'll give you a moment to think about what you'd like to respond. At the end of the trivia, you'll actually have an opportunity. We will select 3 winners at random. Anybody that's participated in the trivia, you'll notice that we do not have, the polls are anonymous. So basically what happens here is it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. You don't have to have all the questions right to be a winner, just have to participate. Also, I just want to alert everybody, we did not get our survey out to poll for questions for this event in advance. I was on vacation this week. I apologize, I didn't get that done. So please put your questions into chat and we will collect the questions and we will use them at the end of the session to present to Dr. Soaries. So first question on our poll. Juneteenth is also called what? Is it called Freedom Day? Is it called Emancipation Day? Or is it called Slave Freedom Day? What is Juneteenth also called? What is it also known as? Freedom Day, Slave Freedom Day, Emancipation Day. We have about 65% of our folks in with responses. All right, we'll get to about 85% and then we'll close the polls. We're just about there. Juneteenth is also called what? Is it Freedom Day? Is it Emancipation Day? Or is it Slave Freedom Day? All right, we're going to end our polling and share our results. All right. Juneteenth is also called Emancipation Day. So 35 people, 51% of our participants got that correct. If you selected Emancipation Day, put a little stroke count next to on your paper so that you can keep track of your results. Congratulations to those 35. We make these questions very hard, just so you know. So if you didn't get it right, not to worry. All right, next question. Why is this holiday called Juneteenth? Is it because this is the name given by Abraham Lincoln? Is it because it's a holiday celebrated in June, or is it because the name is a portmanteau of the day and the month for when it is observed? So a portmanteau is a combination of a couple of different things. Why is this holiday called Juneteenth? All right, we see, we got a lot of voters in at this point. 91 people on the call, and we've got 65 voted. Select your answer. Why is this holiday called Juneteenth? All right, we're going to finish up, end our polling, and share our results. 72 people got that answer correct. The name is a portmanteau of the day and the month for when it was observed. So if you didn't know what a portmanteau is, now you know, and it's something that you've learned in addition to what you're going to hear about today. That is a combination of a couple of different things. So congratulations to the 72 of you who got that correct, but you're all winners for participating. All right, next question. Who started Juneteenth? Was it Abraham Lincoln? Was it General Gordon Granger, or was it Vice President Andrew Johnson? And you better have had your coffee if you're going to try to say General Gordon Granger on a Friday morning after a Friday Eve. You better have had your coffee. Is it Abraham Lincoln that started Juneteenth? Was it General Gordon Granger or Vice President Andrew Johnson? Who started Juneteenth? All right, 60% of you are in. We're up to 98 participants and we've got about 69 of you have participated. We'll let it open keep it open a little bit longer. Who started Juneteenth? Vice President Andrew Johnson, General Gordon Granger, or Abraham Lincoln? All right, we're going to end our poll. And we're going to share our results. All right, the correct answer here is General Gordon Granger. So if you are one of the 25 people that got that correct, please put a stroke count down on your paper so that you can keep track of your results. Remember, you don't have to get them all correct to be a winner, just need to participate. Abraham Lincoln and Vice President Andrew Johnson were incorrect answers. General Gordon Granger actually started Juneteenth. All right, our next question. True or false, Juneteenth is recognized as a national holiday. True or false, Juneteenth is recognized as a national holiday. True or false, Juneteenth is recognized as a national holiday. See 77 of 102 people in with their responses. Give it another moment and we'll close our polls. All right. Sherry, help me out here. It is not recognized as a national holiday. Am I correct about that?
Correct.
All right. So if you said false and you were one of those 50 people, you got that correct. It is false. It is not recognized as a national holiday. However, Delta Dental of New Jersey and Connecticut does recognize it as a company holiday, and we are all going to be off from work next Friday in honor of Juneteenth. And those are the results there. Sorry, I didn't share those. All right, next question. Question number 5. And by the way, if you have not posted a question in the chat box that you would like to know about, because we didn't send out a request for questions for this event, please feel free to put them in chat now or anytime during our presentation, and we will present those questions to Dr. Soaries and get to as many as we can. All right, next question. Juneteenth is commemorated in how many states? Is it 37 states, 47 states, or 22 states? How many states is Juneteenth commemorated in? We have 105 participants and 67 have voted so far. Keep those votes coming in, make your best guess. There are no wrong answers, we all just try. All right, we have 80% in. Let's go with the results here. All right, Juneteenth is commemorated in how many states? For those of you who selected 47, you are correct. Please put a stroke count on your paper so that you can track your results. 47 of our 52 states commemorate Juneteenth. Do we make these questions very hard? We do this on purpose to just get everybody moving in the morning. Question number 6, which states currently do not recognize Juneteenth? Is it Tennessee, South Carolina, and Virginia? Is it North Dakota, South Dakota, and Hawaii? Or is it Georgia, Alabama, and Florida? Which 3 states do not recognize Juneteenth? Thank you to everybody who came in early and is participating in our trivia today. We're very happy that you're here. You're in for a great presentation. Going to learn some things. We already learned that what a postmanteau is. That's not bad for a Friday morning in June. All right, which states currently do not recognize Juneteenth? Tennessee, South Carolina, and Virginia, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Hawaii, or is it Georgia, Alabama, and Florida? And we have about 80% of our participants in, so I'm going to stop the polls and we're going to look at our results. 48 of you got it the correct answer. It's North Dakota, South Dakota, and Hawaii. Those are 3 states that do not commemorate or recognize Juneteenth. If you got that correct, make sure you put a stroke count on your paper so that you can keep track of your results. All right, next question, question number 7. What year did Illinois officially recognize Juneteenth? What year did Illinois officially recognize Juneteenth? Was it in 1865, 1976, or 2003? What year did Illinois officially recognize Juneteenth? And we have 112 participants. 81 of you have participated in this question. What year did Illinois officially recognize Juneteenth? And we're going to leave it up for just another moment to give everybody a chance to participate. And we're going to end the polling. And Sherry, help me out here. What year?
2003.
2003. So 50 of you, or 58%, got that correct. 1976 was a bicentennial year. 1865 was the year that we know that Juneteenth. I don't want to give my questions away, but
yes,
2003 is the correct answer here. If you're one of those 50 people, put a stroke count on your paper because you're a winner. You're all winners for participating. And we're going to go with one more question. Question number 8. Here we go. What year? Everybody should get this right now. What year did Juneteenth begin in the United States? I'm giving away the house today. What year did Juneteenth begin in the US? All right, I'm going to close the polls. We're about in here. What year did Juneteenth begin in the United States? If you selected 1865, you are correct. 55 of you did select 1865. Also, going back to our very first question before we begin our presentation, I'm going to see if I can pull it back up. For those of you who selected Freedom Day, Claude just messaged me and said Juneteenth is also known as Freedom Day. So you're a winner if you selected that that answer as well. Just going back and keeping it real, everybody. So I'm going to stop sharing those results, and I'm going to thank everybody for participating in our trivia this morning. And we are so thankful that you're here. If you have not, if you have a question about something that Dr. Soaries talks about, or you have a question about Juneteenth in any capacity, don't hesitate to put it in our chat. We're going to be keeping track of the questions, and we'll be using them to present to Dr. Soaries after his presentation. And right now, I'd like to, again, thank you all for participating and turn it over to Kim.
Sure. Thanks, Lois. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Diversity Council, we're very happy that everyone is joining us this morning. And I'm happy to welcome Dr. DeForest Soaries Jr., who is a trustee of the Delta Dental of New Jersey Foundation. Dr. Soaries will be speaking with us today about the history, significance, and relevance of Juneteenth. Dr. Soaries is also the president of Corporate Community Connections, which creates connections between corporations and underserved communities to help accomplish the mutual benefits of increased access to diverse markets and expanded community resources. He is also the senior pastor of First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens in Somerset, New Jersey. From 1999 to 2002, Dr. Soaries served as New Jersey's Secretary of State, making him the first African-American male to do so. Dr. Soaries is also an author of several books, including Say Yes to No Debt, 12 Steps to Financial Freedom, Meditations for Financial Freedom, Volumes 1 and 2, and Say Yes When Life Says No. He is also the creator of the nonprofit DeForest, which is a financial freedom movement in use by thousands of churches and organizations across the country. DeForest has also been featured on CNN in a 90-minute Black in America documentary entitled Almighty Debt. His work has also been featured in several publications, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Black Enterprise. Dr. Soaries is currently a member of the board of directors at Aquin Financial Corp, Independence Realty Trust, and Federal Home Loan Bank of New York. He serves as the compensation chair on all three of these boards. Dr. Soaries earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from Fordham University, a Master of Divinity degree from Princeton Theological Seminary, and a Doctor of Ministry degree from United Theological Seminary. His pastoral ministry focuses on spiritual growth, educational excellence, and economic empowerment. And before I turn it over to Dr. Soaries, I'm just going to let everyone know that it's up to you if you want to keep it in the gallery mode where you can see everyone. You can also switch it over to speaker mode, so you'll see Dr. Soaries. So thank you so much, Dr. Soaries, for joining us this morning. And I am now going to turn it over to you.
Come down.
Thank you very much, Kim, and I hope you received my reports on time.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Listen, thank you, Delta Dental, for pausing and considering important subjects, not just today, but on a regular basis. You have embraced the concept of diversity having value, and you have had various speakers. One of my trustees from the church, Dr. George McLaughlin, was a recent speaker, and Dr. McLaughlin, in many ways, is responsible for my being in New Jersey and at First Baptist Church. And so thank you. Thank you to the leadership. Thank you to the management. And thank you all for being a part of this celebration. I'm overwhelmed by the number of people here. I can see the number. That's one of the benefits of Zoom. It does the counting for you. And so I see 162 participants early on Friday morning. So thank you. And thank you to the committee that organizes these events and is responsible for my participation. You know, when I was growing up, I was born in Brooklyn, and I was raised in North Jersey. And of course, I went to church. I've been to church all of my life. I took a brief vacation when I was about 18. I came back at about 24, but I've been in church. And what I knew about church was this. I knew that people who had not been to church for years would be in church on Easter. I hope that beeping sound is not me. I went off camera to find it, but I'm assuming it's not me.
You know what? That is not you, Dr. Soaries. That is people joining the session. And I'm muting folks too. If you have not muted yourself, it's outside of Dr. Soaries, please mute yourself so that we minimize the noise. Thank you so much.
Okay, good. As long as it's not me. And Easter, of course, celebrating the resurrection of Christ, is the central day for Christianity, and all faiths, all races, all sectors of the church celebrate on Easter. Now, what's interesting is that from a distance, one might assume that the next largest day, at least in terms of church participation and support, would be Christmas. You have the resurrection of Christ in the spring, and you have the birth of Christ in December. But what was always confusing to me was that Christmas was not the second most subscribed activity of the church. Of course, we had big crowds, and we still have big crowds. They mainly come to see their children, you know, reciting poems and singing songs. But what was so alarming to me as a young man, and even growing into adulthood, was that the second largest celebration in Black churches all across America was New Year's Eve. And on New Year's Eve, people would come. In fact, at the church I serve now, before we built our new sanctuary, we literally had to turn people away because we were violating all of the fire codes on New Year's Eve. And even now, when we reopened the church, we've been closed, of course, like everyone else, for over a year. But when we come back to New Year's Eve, we have so many people, even in our new large sanctuary, we have to have two services. We have an early New Year's Eve service, and then we have a late New Year's Eve service. And at my former church, people would come in such large number right after 11 o'clock. They'd come with their tuxedos, they'd come with their gowns, because the point was to be in church at midnight. And in my mind, until I did the kind of research that we've come to discuss today, in my mind, I thought the tradition was a kind of superstition where people just wanted to be found in, quote unquote, in God's house when the year starts. And it was a kind of good luck, spiritually good luck charm. But then as I grew and as I studied, what I realized was that in Black churches, first of all, New Year's Eve service was not called New Year's Eve service. We call it Watch Night service. And Watch Night service started on December 31st, 1862, when Black people gathered in churches and in places that had been made kind of makeshift churches. And they were gathered there December 31st, 1862, because the Emancipation Proclamation took effect on January 1st, 1863. Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1862, and in that proclamation, it declared that as of January 1st, 1863, the slaves would be freed. And so Black people were so happy. Black people had such high levels of expectation. Black people were just incredibly moved that they packed in churches all over the South mainly, but all over the country. And they packed in because at midnight on January 1st, 1863, the abolition of slavery became real. And so all of my young life, I assumed that Black people just wanted to be in church when the year started, when in fact, that was a tradition that started at the end of slavery, celebrating the Emancipation Proclamation. And that's why we never called it New Year's Eve service. We call it Watch Night service. But then, of course, we're here at this moment because on January 1st, 1863, there was one state that didn't get the message. There was one state where there was no Watch Night service. There was one state where the enslaved people had no idea that they in fact were free, and that was the state of Texas. And so it was not until June 19th, 1865, that word got to Galveston, Texas, that in 1863, they had been freed from slavery. And on June 19th, 1865, the Blacks who had been enslaved in Texas were so excited. They were they were just thrilled that they began in 1865 what had happened around the country in 1863. And so in 1865, June 19th, the day was nicknamed Juneteenth because of the month and the date that the freedom finally reached Texas. And so in 1866, there started this celebration, this anniversary, as it were, of June 19th. And the anniversary included parades, and the anniversary included family reunions, because the priority of the freed slaves in Texas was to reunite with families. Slavery, among many of its evils, broke up families, and families had been dispersed. Mothers had been separated from their children, husbands separated from their wives. And so in 1866, the family reunion became one of the staples of the Juneteenth celebration. Because it's Texas, and because of the Western nature of the Texas culture, of course, Texans ride horses, and we've seen Texas on television all of our lives. Parades with horses became one of the symbols of the Juneteenth celebration, and of course, barbecue and food. And of course, even after I discovered the Watch Night service origins, I didn't know about Juneteenth because I was raised in New Jersey. And I always heard that there was something called Juneteenth, and I heard that Black people in Texas had this great celebration, and I was aware that it had spread to other states, but I had no idea what Juneteenth was. All I knew was that Juneteenth was a party, and growing up Black, I knew that we did not need huge reasons to have parties. we are a celebrative culture. And so I just figured Juneteenth was something that happened in Texas. I thought perhaps it was a divine nine meaning the 9 major Greek letter organizations, fraternities and sororities. I thought maybe it had emanated from the historically Black college and university culture. But as I grew, I began to study more. And of course, I learned what you now know. By the way, thank you for not allowing me to participate in those polls, because I would have done, I would not have done as well as many of your employees. But Juneteenth then celebrates, in one sense, the completion of a cycle. You know, I've been talking to young people who are involved in organizing a National Juneteenth Unity Fest. And if you'd like to participate online, it's a virtual festival. It's on Juneteenth. And I think the URL is juneteenthunityfest.com or something like that. And I'll be a speaker. Earth, Wind, and Fire is going to be singing. Felicia Rashad is going to be speaking. B.B. Winans, Kirk Franklin, and others. It's a multicultural, multiracial celebration of Juneteenth. And in many ways, we are celebrating how far we've come. The fact is, this country has had its bumps and its blemishes in its effort to promise people that we would be what Dr. King called true to what we say on paper, that no society has been perfect, and we certainly have our share of imperfections. And when the greatest words ever written for society became our code, our founding principles, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Those were lofty words. And, you know, it reminds me of what happens at weddings. I've been in ministry 45 years. I've been at this church 30 years. And whenever I perform a wedding, the core question is, do you take this man to be your wedded husband? Do you take this woman to be your wedded wife? And then there are these commitments. You promise to love and respect and cherish, you know, in thick and thin, good times and bad. And then the response, the appropriate response is, I do. But the truth is, I'll try. I mean, the best you can promise is to try, because things happen, life happens. And the fact of the matter is, no marriage is happy 100% of the time. No relationship is perfect from day one. And it's no different with a country. And so in many ways, had they told the total truth, they would have said, we will try to be e pluribus unum, one out of many. We will try to ensure that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And what's so powerful about this experiment called America is that every generation has made more contributions to get us closer to those words. When those words were written, the women weren't even asked to sit at the table. When those words were written, Blacks were not considered fully human. When those words were written, the natives of this land had already experienced the abuse of power. But since those words were written, we have fought hard, we've changed laws, we've elected people, we have become, in fact, the model of the world. And although we still have our imperfections, we're the country that more people strive to get into than any other country on the planet. And so in many ways, when we celebrate Juneteenth, we are really celebrating Black and white and Hispanic and Asian and rich and poor, male and female. We are celebrating how far we have come. Because when you look at America in retrospect, what you have to realize is that all of our corrections, all of our improvements have come from the inside. We didn't have to be invaded by foreign power. We didn't have to be taken to a world court to fix our challenges. We are a self-correcting society that has proven that it's possible. And in many ways, we are also celebrating a commitment to continue making things better. We can't remain a society that's as polarized as we are. The fact is, we should be old enough now to know you can disagree without being disagreeable. We should have been through enough by now to know that just because I disagree with you doesn't make you my enemy. And we should also be intelligent enough to know, listen, if we can be smart enough to put a machine on Mars and then launch a helicopter after it gets there, we should be smart enough to know that men have something to offer women, that Asians have something to offer Hispanics, that Blacks have something to offer whites, that our diversity simply symbolizes and suggests that each of us have a piece of the human puzzle. And it's when we come together that the entire puzzle can be complete. And so when we recognize Juneteenth, we're not asking people to be guilty because of what happened in the past, nor are we asking people to be naive about what's happening in the present, but rather we are joining hands, joining hearts, joining minds, realizing the flaws of the past, seizing the opportunities of the present, and then claiming new frontiers and new victories in the future. You know, just 2 weeks ago, we recognized the 100th anniversary of the worst, one of the worst, if not the worst, racial massacre in the history of our country in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was in May of 1921 that the Black neighborhood of Greenwood, Oklahoma, in Tulsa was burned down by angry racist mobs. And then to add insult to injury, the insurance companies to whom those Black homeowners and Black business owners had been paying premiums refused to honor their claims. And so they were never able to rebuild. And 100 years later in Tulsa, we still see the vestiges of that horrific violence that was inflicted on those people. But while we can't change the past, we can build for the future. And that's why I'm so thrilled that Delta Dental has paused to recognize Juneteenth. That's why I'm so honored to see so many people in this gathering this morning. And that's why I'm optimistic about the future, because we still in this country have more decent people than we do fools. We still have more honest people than we do liars. And we still have much more opportunity than we've ever seen in our lives. And so I want to thank you for honoring our past. And I want to thank you for inviting all of us to celebrate together, because Juneteenth gives us exactly what we need. A moment when we can heal, a moment when we can help each other, and a moment when we can be prospective in our expectations. So God bless you. Thank you for having me. And Kim, thank you for not beating me up for waiting to the last minute to submit my reports.
Well, Dr. Soaries, this is Sherry Alexander. I want to thank you so much for the message that you brought today. I'm familiar with Watch Night Service. I'm familiar with Juneteenth, but there's always a learning experience, and I want to thank you for that. So I have a few questions that I'd like to ask you that a few people submitted. And I'm going to start off with, if you could give your teenage self advice now, what would it be?
Save money. I save money. If I had started saving $100 a month when I was a teenager, I'd be a multimillionaire today.
Mm-hmm.
Save money, save money. We live in a consumer culture. I spend a lot of my time urging people and teaching people about strategies for handling money. And I don't think there's any message more important for teenagers today than to take control of money and really begin saving and investing for their future.
Mm-hmm. Is this what inspired you to create your nonprofit, D-Free?
It is. You know, when I was in my 20s, I used credit cards as though they were income. So if I made $25,000 a year and I had a credit card with a $5,000 limit, I lived as if I made $30,000. And I lived that way for 13 years. I was being called by bill collectors. It was just horrible. I tell all of my business in my book. But then I awakened to the fact that it's not how much money you earn, it's what you do with the money that you have that determines your quality of life. And when I learned that, it changed my life. I fell in love in 1977 but I couldn't afford to get married to 1985 because I was trying to get out of. My wife thought I was in prayer, but the truth is I was in debt, and so I became a pastor, and my church was growing just quickly in Somerset. And year 15 of my pastorate, 2005, we had trouble. The church had trouble paying its bills because we built this great big building. We had cost overruns in construction, and we had borrowed more money than we really could afford. And so the trustees came to me and said, "We need more money." And I said, "I'm not a fundraiser." But when I analyzed our situation, I realized that my members in 2005 were living the same way I was when I first started in ministry. And so I told my trustees, look, if we help our people get out of debt and make that the priority, then our people will be in a position to help the church get out of debt, and they'll be willing to do it. And we did that. And so that's what started D Free.
Very good. I'm going to read a question that's in the chat. It's one of our, actually, she's one of our diversity council members. Her name is Keisha Stokling. She wrote that she never knew about Juneteenth until 1992, but found out on her own. Why do you think people aren't aware of Juneteenth?
Well, you know, our educational system has been somewhat negligent in its lack of inclusiveness. I went to an all-Black school, and I didn't read a thing about, forget Juneteenth, I didn't read a thing about slavery as a child. I didn't really know much about slavery until I saw Alex Haley Roots. You know, we just, and listen, you know, I try to be fair, and I imagine when I talk to people about my life, I lean towards the good things and shy away from the bad things. You know, I did an interview with third graders the day before yesterday, and it was the most amazing experience of my life. And one girl asked me, a third grader, she said, "Have you ever gotten in trouble?" The third grader, and we were online. This was a Zoom, and so I said, "Well, I've gotten in good trouble." And I told her some good things that I did that got me in trouble. And I said, the bad trouble, I'm not going to tell you about. So, you know, listen, the American educational system has left out a lot of details about Native Americans. I didn't know about Native Americans until I went to visit them on reservations. The Black church. So I think we're now catching up. Again, it's a part of a maturation process. America is maturing. The George Floyd video sped up, I think, some of the maturation as it relates to Black America, quite frankly. I think that young teenager that filmed that atrocious act by the police officer, it helped a lot of people understand why Black people are so suspicious of the police. I mean, all of my white friends, before George Floyd, all of my white friends would say to me, "Why would you fear the police if you've done nothing wrong?" And now these videos and this Breonna Taylor and these other videos have shown that, like in every industry and every profession, there are some bad apples running around here, and some of those apples have badges and guns. So that's a long way of saying that American education has been somewhat skewed, as every culture, you know. And I think now we're growing up and we're becoming much more inclusive through programs like these.
Yeah, thank you. I have another question from another Diversity Council member. Are there any cultures where slavery is still practiced? If so, how can we help to end this injustice?
Well, one of the dirty little secrets of our society today is that we're not doing enough to protect children from kidnapping and human trafficking, especially children in foster care. And I could do another hour just on that. But I think to the extent that human trafficking is a global problem, many of those children wind up in slavery, and some of them are sex slaves. And I think we need to study more about it. We need to be active. We need to support organizations that focus exclusively on that. There are a lot of children in foster care in Texas that are snatched and taken over the border. There are a lot of poor families in developing countries who literally sell their children because they don't have economic opportunity, and they sell them into slavery. And so I would direct you to the causes that focus on human trafficking. And I think they will lead you on a path to understanding where slavery is, where it's prominent, and what you can do about it.
Okay. And that I mentioned, the person that sent that question is Melanie Rhodes. She's also a member of our Diversity Council.
Thank you, Melanie.
Do you think the residue of slavery still affects our country's African-American communities today? And if so, in what ways?
Well, sure it does. In almost every way. I don't think it's universal. Here's what I mean. 1/3 of African Americans are doing pretty well. We make money, we have education, we've been able to navigate the system. We're on corporate boards. I would be hard pressed to identify any barrier based on race that hinders my life. My life is blessed, my children are blessed. However, the bottom third of Black America is stuck in a kind of perpetual poverty. They're stuck in zip codes where the schools are the worst. They're stuck in neighborhoods where the food is more expensive and less nutritious. They're stuck in areas where there's less access to healthcare. And many of them are third and fourth generation descendants of people who are stuck. I mean, there are people who are leaving Section 8 vouchers, you know, to their children and public housing apartments. And listen, I'm not against Section 8 and I'm not against public housing, but in too many instances, programs that were designed to help people close a gap have become permanent fixtures in their lives. A friend of mine describes it as the difference between an ambulance and a transportation system. You know, you don't want an ambulance picking you up every day. An ambulance takes you to get your help and then you get on your feet. So, you know, through the foundation, we are helping people with dental care and oral tests that unless there's some major intervention, they're going to be where they are. And some of this is caused by the legacy of slavery. So slavery, in many ways, robbed generations of Black people from resources that they otherwise would have. Suppose slaves had been paid and left some legacy for their children, and then they left their legacy for some children. Suppose slaves had been able to own land and the land was passed along. And some of the slaves that bought land had their land stolen from them. We just had in California, the city council in Los Angeles just voted to give back land to the descendants of people. They weren't slaves, but they just come out of slavery. And they owned a long section of beach in California. It was taken from them, and today it's worth millions. So there are economic consequences, there are educational consequences. Frederick Douglass was born a slave and taught himself how to read, but everyone couldn't have done that. Mm-hmm. There are psychological. We have a program now. We have a contract with one district. We're going into 5 next year, where we are helping young African Americans in some of these suburban districts who should be okay, but they're lagging behind. And what we find is that some of their challenge is just self-esteem, and there are tangible self-esteem issues that have been passed along because, you see, slavery after it ended did not end stereotypical images in media. Slavery did not end the limited access to resources. What slavery did was create a foundation of ignorance and systemic racism that impacted people in ways that are that are almost immeasurable. And so we still wrestle with overcoming the residue of slavery and the institutions that reflect the attitude and temperament of slavery. And that's why these kinds of forums are important. And that's why the Diversity Council is important, because we have to look for ways that people who are disabled, people who are LGBTQ, people who are ethnic minorities, people who are different genders. We have to constantly look for the vestiges of impairment that create barriers for these people, because the country was set up basically for white men with money, white men who own land. And we've been trying to unfold and unpack and expand that ever since. And it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen by passing a law. It doesn't happen by snapping a finger. It happens when honest people are willing to do honest work and to tell the truth and to make change.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. In your opinion, what needs to happen in order for there to truly be liberty and justice for all in this country?
Well, we have to get to know each other. You know, most of us live in bubbles. You know, we live in Black bubbles, we live in white bubbles, we live in rural bubbles, we live in urban bubbles. And if you live in a bubble long enough, you have a tendency to believe and act as if the whole world is your bubble. But we've got to get out, we've got to talk to people, we've got to ask questions. I call it the 3 L's. We've got to look at each other, really take a hard look at each other. I understand why many of my friends say, look, Soaries, I never owned a slave. And so why should I be responsible for fixing anything? And I understand that. I understand the thought process. I've heard it enough. But I want my friend to understand that while you never owned a slave, you benefited from slavery in ways that I did not. So if I'm willing to listen to you, if you'll listen to me, but we have to look at each other, we have to listen to each other, and then we have to figure out ways to laugh together. You know, I think, you know what I think the biggest problem in America is? I think our biggest problem is we've lost our sense of humor. You know, we've lost the Johnny Carson culture. We've lost our ability to laugh, and we're a little too uptight. You know, so if someone says something, excuse me, someone says something that offends me, the reason I can laugh about it is not because I'm a punk, I'm not a sellout, but I can laugh about it because I don't take it personally. The person has just revealed their ignorance, and if given a chance, I can teach them to do better. So we need to recapture our sense of humor and learn how to laugh together. And if we can look at each other, if we can listen to each other and laugh together, we can learn to love each other. You know, Martin Luther King, if you look at Martin Luther King, who I believe was the quintessential leader of the 20th century. When Martin Luther King talked about nonviolence, he wasn't simply talking about marching without guns. Nonviolence for Dr. King had 6 principles. Principle number 1 was that nonviolence is a lifestyle, right? Number 2, and this was the most important, that the goal of nonviolence is reconciliation. Dr. King was not only trying to change laws, he was trying to change lives. The goal was for us to live together as what he called a beloved community. So winning a fight around legislation is not the end, it's simply the means to an end. And the assumption he made was that if we ever remove the barriers that keep us apart, we might find that we have more in common than we have different, and our destinies are inextricably bound and linked to each other.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions in the chat. What is your take on reparations?
I believe if you're a plumber and you come to my house and fix my toilet, you send me a bill, If I don't pay you, as long as I don't pay you, I owe you the money.
Mhm.
And if you die and your son sends me your bill, then I owe your son the money. And if he dies and I still haven't paid the bill, and his son sends me the bill, I still owe the money. And I think that's just a matter of common sense and law. I think Black people worked for 246 years without pay.
Mhm.
Dr. King said we came to Washington in 1963 for a check that was written, but it bounced. And so I believe America owes the descendants of African slaves reparations.
Mhm. Okay, I have another question from the chat. It's interesting that you say race is not a barrier to you or your children. Has this always been your experience, or is it because of the prestige and social standing you have earned over the years?
No. Let me say this. I have been exposed to racial prejudice. I have been exposed to racial ignorance, and I've been exposed to racial hurdles, and still am. I mean, just yesterday, I had an experience. I went out to my first event. I haven't been out for 15 months. And when I got there, it was an event with about 250 people, and maybe 2 of us were Black. When I got there, the guy acted like I wasn't supposed to be there. It was clear as day. He was so then a woman at the table recognized me and he was embarrassed. So I'm exposed just
Yeah.
like everybody else. All I'm suggesting is that the racism to which I've been exposed has not stopped me from achieving what I've achieved.
Got it.
So I'm not naive.
Mhm.
And every Black person is going to be exposed. But unlike 1930, 40, 50, and 60, racism is no longer the primary barrier to stop us from achieving success in most instances. That's all I'm saying.
Mhm.
Yes, I've been exposed long before I was, and I'm not that prominent now, but long before I had degrees and whatnot. And I had to fight through. I had to fight through racial conflict, but I was able to fight through it. I had the equipment. I had the family background. You know, I lived in a home owned by my grandmother. I had a culture that was kind of the wind beneath my wings.
Mhm.
And so what I'm suggesting is that racism was not strong enough to stop me, like it was not strong enough to stop Oprah Winfrey. Oprah has faced racism, but racism didn't stop Oprah from kicking Phil Donahue off the air.
Mhm. Would you say this is what made you push through to meet your goals?
Well, the first thing that pushed through was my father. He pushed me through, because if I had not gone through it, he'd kick me out. So, you know, my parents insisted on excellence. They insisted on my doing homework. They insisted on me going to church. So I had a family background that would not accept anything other than excellence. And I think today, the biggest breakdown we have is the breakdown of that strong family unit that has propelled people to success of every background, of every color. And then I've had access to good education. I went to a segregated school, but it was school, and we learned the basics. And if you learn to read, write, count, and speak, you know, there's opportunity for you in America. And then I had great professors. My mentor was the same man who mentored Martin Luther King Jr., Sam Proctor. So I've had exposure to great people, but I think the engine has been my family.
Mhm. Okay, I have a few more questions.
Sure.
Can you share a challenging experience you overcame while working as New Jersey's Secretary of State?
Yeah, on September 11th, I have many, by the way, but on September 11th, I was responsible for coordinating New Jersey's response to New York's needs when the World Trade Center fell. And I physically went into New York with the #2 commander of the New Jersey State Police to One Police Plaza and meet with the police there, because that was the control center. And my job was to find out what they needed that New Jersey had. And when we walked in to one police plaza, big police guy in charge. He goes to the lieutenant colonel of the state police and greets him and basically tells me to sit over in the corner. So I went and sat over in the corner. I just wanted to wait and see how this would play out. And so the police commander from New York began explaining to the lieutenant colonel from the state police all of the ways New Jersey could help New York. And then the lieutenant colonel said, well, the man sitting over there in the corner, that's the one you have to talk to because he's the one who has the authority to approve it. And if you could have seen that man's face, he must have turned 18 shades of everything. And again, it was interesting, and I understood it. He had never seen a black man as Secretary of State before, and he couldn't imagine that if there's a white man in a uniform and a black man in a suit, that the black man in the suit was in charge. So I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have a couple more. Let's see here. Can you talk about the difference in referring to those who were in bondage in this country as the enslaved versus referring to them as slaves?
Yeah, we have a tendency in our culture to use to allow adjectives to turn into nouns, and then it becomes people become objectified. You see. So we don't call homeless people, we just call them homeless.
Mm-hmm.
When in fact, they're a person who happens to be homeless. And when we lose an appreciation for the personhood, then I think we rob ourselves of a certain level of analysis and humanity that people deserve. Mm-hmm. And so I've tried to train myself to remember to refer to Blacks who were in slavery as enslaved Africans, as opposed to slaves.
Right.
Because slavery mm-hmm. was the state, but a slave is primarily a person who is in the circumstance of slavery.
Right.
And if we lose a sense of personhood, whether it's women, whether it's poor people, we talk about the poor as though they're not people. And I think our language has not served us well as we consider solutions for significant social problems.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have one more question for you, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Kim.
Okay.
What is the significance of Juneteenth to you, and what is the significance of Juneteenth to the United States?
Well, for me, the significance of Juneteenth is the emphasis on freedom. And I'm so glad you asked me that question because I forgot to say something very important. And while it's important to celebrate the freedom of those who were enslaved in 1865, my mission is to focus on whatever needs exist today for people to be free. And what I've discovered is that financial freedom still seems to be an elusive goal, especially for African Americans. And so what my nonprofit is doing is two things. One, we are participating in this Juneteenth Unity Festival online, June 19th, 5 p.m. But we're also signing people up for our free online Financial Freedom Academy. And we're inviting people to join the movement to achieve their own financial freedom on Juneteenth. So Juneteenth is both a look back at 1865 and a look forward to changing our relationship with money. And all of you are welcome to join. You can go to mydfree.org, mydfree.org, and sign up. And on Juneteenth, we're going to launch a freedom kind of cohort of thousands of people going through a process of financial freedom together. So that's what Juneteenth means to me. For America, Juneteenth, again, is a celebration of how far we've come and an assessment and recognition of how far we yet have to go.
I just want to say one more thing, Kim, before you start. The Diversity Council, I'm giving something away right now, but the Diversity Council is actually going to start a financial series financial wellness series here for the Delta Dental Associates coming soon. More to come later.
Any of our tools that we have are available to you for free. And so whatever resources we possess,
Mhm.
you can check it out, talk to my staff, and they'll help you do that in whatever way you need help.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Kim.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Soaries. On behalf of our Diversity Council and everyone on the call, I think we all probably found your talk very inspiring and educational and hopeful. And actually, with you closing out talking about D-Free, I'm happy to share with you and everyone on the call that Delta Dental has made a $5,000 donation to D-Free. And just to reiterate that D-Free is a nonprofit that Dr. Soaries founded that has helped more than 100,000 people by providing lifestyle-focused and faith-based financial empowerment for African Americans via content programming, online tools, and events. And we've also added D-Free to our, we have an associate giving platform where we list several nonprofits, and we've added D-Free to that platform. And it's a voluntary program. So if any of our associates donate to any of the nonprofits listed on that platform, including D-Free, Delta Dental will match those donations for up to $10,000. So again, it's a voluntary program, but just want all of our associates to know that D-Free is now also included on that associate giving platform.
Wonderful.
And
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kim.
sure. And just as a reminder to everyone on the call, the Diversity Council will be sending out a survey after this event. So we encourage everyone to take the survey because we do take that feedback to help improve any future events that we offer. And also we have one more Diversity Council event this month in honor of June also being Pride Month. We do have an event, another virtual event on June 25th, and that will be about educating on the LGBTQIA communities. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Soaries. We really appreciate you taking the time this morning to speak with all of us. And thank you everyone for attending the session. And we hope that everyone has a nice Friday and a great weekend.
Great.
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Soaries. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all very
you.
much.
Thank you. Mhm.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kim, Sherry.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm staying. Thank you. This was so amazing, doctor. What a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll close the meeting out and then I will reach back out to you both.
Okay. All right.